Hey all, implicitly any tuber now, there's life before Evangelion and there's life afterwards. For 2021, despite all the great stuff that came out, the one thing that shines the brightest for me was this show from 26 years ago. Shut up, Leo! I like anime in a shrug why not sort of way, particularly when it comes to its rawness, its willingness to cross taboos and do a lot with very little. Take this shot. Without any crazy extravagant action scenes or complex images, we feel Shinji's anxiety within the size of the operation around him. That simple but sharp precision is the show's magic, not just in terms of aesthetics, but in everything from music, pacing, editing, and its capacity to hone in and stay in abstract, unsanitized, and uncomfortable emotional spaces. And now that I'm done with all the buzzwords, let's break it down. Evangelion is 24 episodes, and on a surface level, it's a pretty darn simple hero's journey about teenagers saving the world in giant robot suits against angels to avert the end of the world. In the first 8 episodes, we watch Shinji come out of his shell after seeing a hot girl in need of help. He becomes an experienced and talented child soldier basically, and actually begins to make friends with people. Then in episodes 9 through 16, Asuka, his rival slash love interest slash 14-year-old who's not at all sexualized, is introduced. Therefore, Shinji's social development includes his sexual side as he bumbles around with her and has more adventures with his friends. This show is very likable at this point, with a razor-sharp sense of wits and sincere youthful energy as Shinji eats toast with a penguin and saves the world every week. But then, the final 8 episodes happen. Everything is unmade. The show transitions into full-on misery porn that has no interest in being entertaining, but just wants to interrogate everyone's insecurities before they're completely consumed and torn apart by them. It's kind of like watching Power Rangers and then Melancholia immediately afterwards. All the characters are flawed, not in a sexy Tobey Maguire way where they haven't done anything wrong but are victims to an unfair world, but they're kind of like comic Peter Parker, where they're victims to themselves, where self-doubt and impulsive self-hatred interferes with their ability to notice and appreciate the good they are and the good they've accomplished. Boom. I'm still a Spider-Man channel, guys. You seek your own value in the perceptions of others, as Ray said. This is everyone. Masato has people around her to escape the feeling of being alone. Asuka likes to act all confident and cocky, but she lives for the approval of others, desiring attention, and as she fails again and again, she becomes catatonic. Ray is a teenage clone of Shinji's mom, who he originally had the hots for, and I was like, yeah, they should get together, and now I just feel very weird for thinking that. Her life is like a shadow for which she can never truly understand because she doesn't know how to value it, value herself. If you map everyone out using the self-concept theory, everyone has an ideal self that doesn't correspond with their self-image because their self-esteem keeps getting dragged down perpetually by their need to blame themselves, and the structuring of the entire show effectively was done in a way that gives you a glimpse of better versions of these characters when they're socially healthy, but it's also an impression they're not ultimately convinced by. This is where I get into the hero Shinji Ikari, who's often a meme. He's a character written with an uncomfortably blunt and unflattering high amount of specificity. He's a dude whose entire sense of value is derived from the approval of others, like Asuka, but unlike her, he never gains any sense of confidence from his successes, only more self-doubt. Only more reliance on other people to define him. One of the clever ways the show introduces Shinji's low self-esteem, and is precisely when the show hooked me, was in episode 2. During his first fight, we abruptly cut to him waking up in a hospital. He's all messed up. We assumed he lost a fight as he spends the rest of the episode drifting into sadness. But at the end, as he lies in bed, we flash back and realize, no, he did win. The victory, his bravery, all those actions that should have counted just didn't. He just didn't think of them because that's not a pattern of thought that he's ever experienced or done. He's instead haunted by the eyes of his unit staring back at him. Therefore, his only sense of value is in piloting the Ava for other people's approval, specifically his father, because approving who he is just a task that he's not willing or able to do. The finale directly confronts this. Everyone hates episode 25 and 26 because they're so abrupt, cheaply made, the plot with Sale isn't paid off, and like any great TV show ending, it's set entirely in the protagonist's mind, using abstract doodles like a draw your own life YouTube video. However, without sounding too much like a hipster, I kind of love it. I mean, I did go in knowing his reputation, but under the circumstances where creator Hideaki Anno had no money to burn due to either the real-life sarin gas attack or scheduling problems due to his depression and not deciding how to end the story, depending on who you ask, he cut straight to the chase and used what little time and money he had to resolve his character's inner demons and made the lesson learning to accept yourself the climax of the story. It wasn't the giant mecha fights or a conspiracy plot involving a shady organization. Those were all ultimately really just sexy decorations. The story was always about a psychological study of people dealing with pain and loneliness. The final episode itself is basically a video essay where Shinji's psychological profile is diagnosed, a solution is found, and a conclusion summarizing everything is given. The language and dialogue itself also loses a lot of its naturalism. It literally sounds like an academic paper. He has no self-image to orientate himself, as Ray also said. The instrumentality project has begun, which to explain is both abstract and confusing. There's an evil organization called Sale who want to cause an event called the Third Impact, which forces human evolution under their control. They oversee Nerve, which is where our heroes work, but the dude in charge, Shinji's dad, Gendo, also wants to start it himself in order to reunite with his dead wife, because both literally and thematically, the Human Instrumentality Project is also like a tool like any other technology, and its purpose as that tool is to meld everyone's mind as an attempt to fill the loneliness of human existence and bring about a new transcendental abstract new level of existence. In the last episode, this happens off screen and inside Shinji's mind. And inside this sad boy's life, we analyze the semiotics of his existence, because he doesn't know who he is. As a result, the climactic thing in the show isn't a showdown between Sale and Nerve, a fight with an angel, or even Palpatine returning, but Shinji imagines a world with only himself. However, without other people to reflect himself, there's even less for him to understand himself. Therefore, Shinji then has a glimpse of an alternate world without Avas, and learns to look at himself detached from what other people see, while still have the capability to live with them, with a new profound connection with his sense of identity, and thus gain the control to end instrumentality and be congratulated by everyone. If you know yourself, you can look after yourself. That's a very important quote from this episode. Yes, the ending achieves a very powerful thing, which is the ability to be both confusing and clear at the same time, because the metaphors and the reality are one and the same. I think this ending is really quite profound. Yeah, I can imagine how completely disappointing it was back in the day when it first came out, or without any preparation going into it, but it's so earnest and internally consistent that it never feels pretentious or shallow to me. Just naked and very vulnerable. This finale is a passionate statement about how what you think of other people, think of you, is tied to what you think of yourself. We don't just exclusively make assumptions of other people, which is bad of course, but we also make assumptions of ourselves, and assuming we're worthless means we don't ever truly know who we really are or how we exist. Because despite living off the approval of others, there's no real you. You know only just a selectively made idea of you. Therefore, Shinji learns you don't have to be the person you assume you are or obsess over its trappings, because deep down inside within each of us, there's another person waiting to live. And we get to choose who that is. The space between our self-image and our ideal self can be used for creative purposes. We don't have to be melancholy on a rainy day. We don't have to fear other people because we fear connection with ourselves. You just have to learn to love yourself enough to trust your imagination so you can imagine your future beyond what you've assumed from others. The original show finale gave an optimistic conclusion that celebrated this kid's capacity to heal. Congratulations. Then, end of Evangelion shows the worst side of Shinji's impotent rage and sexual frustrations. The backlash against the original show's ending was so big that people graffitied the office of Gainax, and Anno even contemplated suicide after he spilled his little heart out.
1回は電車に飛び込もうと思った。あともう1回は会社の屋上から飛び降りようっていうのが2回ほど危険があって。
Yes, he got the full Star Wars treatment. As a result, some say End of Evangelion, which remakes and replaces the last 2 episodes, is largely a middle finger to the fans. It's a bitter, dark, nihilistic, and almost borderline misanthropic film where everyone dies. Sale goes to war with Nerve, so they send in the Japanese military to massacre everyone, even the surrendering and defenseless. After spending a whole season with these people who saved the world, now we watch them die in the same hallways we once called home, kinda like in Power Rangers. The Human Instrumentality Project is then activated, but instead of Gendo shaping it, Shinji is picked, who's just recently sneezed in Asuka's hospital room. He hates the world now, as he's experienced nothing but rejection recently. But during a montage of crazy abstract images in his mind, which would be where the original ending was set in, he rediscovers the need for people to understand who he is, and that everyone comes back to life in the post-apocalyptic world he created. As a result, some also argue that this is all still kind of in tone of the original intended ending, because in broad strokes it still follows the same plans, but it's also very clear that Anno is under a completely different attitude, a more disenchanted one, so he's accentuated the more vile aspects of his critique against escaping reality. Shinji has avoidant personality disorder, which is defined by extreme social anxiety, feelings of inadequacy, and therefore often leads to self-imposed isolation to cope with the fear of failing others. The original ending highlights self-love as the solution for this. End of Evangelion still represents that message, but more explicitly criticizes and tears apart the more malignant effects of self-hatred and its unintended harmful consequences for everyone else, where escaping into fantasy due to the fear of experiencing rejection is the root cause of not only Shinji's breakdown, but the hate Anno received in real life. There's literally shots of the audience and recreated versions of the hate emails he got. Shinji's avoidance personality disorder is a product of his father's neglect. He's also craving for emotional connection, but cuts them off before they can manifest because he still hasn't lived beyond the trauma of losing his wife. But Shinji just wants someone. He's desperate to feel whole. But as Ray said, his view of others as the answers is merely a selfish dream, and getting rid of everyone also is a selfish dream. And I know anime companies are a little bit more stingy when it comes to copyright stuff, so I'm gonna read, "The only place where you can find happiness is inside dreams, isn't it? So this is why this isn't reality. It's a world devoid of people. Yes, a dream. That's why I'm not here. You made a convenient fantasy to take revenge against reality. What's wrong with that? You were avoiding the truth by escaping into your fabricated world. What's wrong with having your own private dream? That's not a dream. That's just a substitute for reality. So then, where are my dreams? They're beyond where reality lies. Then where's my reality? Reality comes after the dream." I hope that wasn't too bad, my reading there. End of Evangelion is a really powerful piece of work that shows in a very raw way, and often actually incomprehensible one too, to want a place with no one else is an act of self-obsession, a narcissism where you only like the worst part of yourself. But we don't live out there only as what people see. Instead, we should always live in the border between our truths and other people's realities. That's where we live, all of us. To be able to live with other people and be happy with yourself, that's a balance of not being afraid of being abandoned or betrayed because you like yourself enough to not feel threatened. That's everything. That's life. Now, I didn't know how to end this video, and I had this whole paragraph about art that I didn't really know where to put, so I thought if I played some classy music as I read it dramatically, it might create an impression of sophistication and deep conclusive thinking. What made the show and the story stick out to me so profoundly in 2021, and now due to the show being on Netflix, I regularly end up rewatching End of Evangelion loads, was how through symbols, words, and music, it was able to process so many feelings that I felt were there but were too invisible to notice. I had finished university. COVID made staying at home alone doing the same things over and over again legitimate and normal. However, I had become so complacent that I developed a feeling of unprocessed loneliness. I gotta stress, I'm in a different place now. But watching Evangelion felt like a release. All those feelings that had been sitting inside me and increasing in volume wasn't only given words, but a path to deal with it. It gave a story to a feeling which had none. Therefore, I could see an end. I could see a context, and I could finally manage it. I think the lesson here is that art ignores consumer wants. It doesn't answer to commercial demands. It's all about expressing blurry feelings with accuracy, to give color to what often feels colorless, to make visible the invisible, to become a Rorschach test. That's the last pretentious metaphor I've got.
Show me your soul, baby, I'll show you mine. Show me your soul, honey, it's way past time. How explicit do I have to be? Need I spell it out before you get it, baby?
So yeah, this was the Neon Genesis Evangelion video, a complete passion project of mine that I've been working for a very, very long time. Originally, I was going to make it very sort of psychology focused and be mainly specifically focused on avoidant personality disorder, but then I realized I had so much to talk about that I wanted to sort of get off my chest. I ended up throwing away my traditional, introduction, literature review, analysis, discussion structure, and went for more of just a stream of thoughts. Here are my feelings, here's just me introducing all the characters and whatnot. It was a lot more looser. I don't know if there's much of a point to this video because there's already loads of Evangelion video essays on YouTube, but this was mine. I really want to make this video. Special thanks to everyone on Patreon and the 6 of you who probably watched this video even though it's not a Spider-Man one.